Saturday mornings usually mean chores and quiet sighs. Daniel's half-finished coffee, the sound of the washing machine, and me scrolling through emails I don't care about. But that morning, something shifted. I woke up feeling restless. Maybe I was tired of being the woman who always puts herself last. So when my friend mentioned this new salon, Luna's Touch, I thought, why not? Just this once, I'd do something for me. It felt strange, liberating even, to choose myself. As I walked through the glass doors, a soft wave of jasmine and coconut oil wrapped around me. The air felt different inside, calm, intentional, like a space where people remembered how to breathe. I could feel my shoulders loosen for the first time in weeks. The receptionist looked up, all smiles and confidence, the kind of person who seems to float instead of walk. I told her my name, Vanessa Clark, and she typed it in with a cheerful rhythm that made me feel like everything was finally easy again. Then she smiled wider and said, "Ah, Vanessa Clark, welcome back." I blinked. Back? I've never been here before. Her fingers froze midair, and I caught a flicker of confusion behind her perfect lashes. That's when I felt the tiniest knot twist inside my stomach. One of those quiet warnings you don't yet understand, but your body does. The receptionist's smile faltered for a second before she recovered, tilting her head like she was replaying something in her mind. "Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake," she said quickly. "It says here your husband, Daniel, already has an account with us. He booked a luxury package last week, but it was for another guest." Her words floated out so casually like they meant nothing, but to me they landed heavy, right in the center of my chest. I forced a polite laugh, pretending I'd heard wrong. "Another guest?" I repeated, careful to sound curious, not broken. "Yes," she said, checking the screen again. "A woman. It's listed under Emily Rivera. The payment came from your husband's card." My heart stuttered. For a moment, I couldn't even hear the background music. That soft instrumental hum suddenly felt like static. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat and smiled, the way women do when they're holding back the truth. "Oh, right," I managed to say. "That must have been a gift for a friend." She smiled back, relieved, completely unaware of what she'd just dropped into my lap. "That's so sweet of him." I nodded, my lips still curved, but my pulse beating so hard I could feel it in my ears. As I sat down for my appointment, the name Emily Rivera echoed in my head like a bell that refused to stop ringing. I tried to focus on the facial, on the warmth of the towel pressed against my skin, on the soft music that was supposed to make me forget the world outside. But all I could hear was that name, Emily Rivera. It pulsed behind my eyelids like a whisper I couldn't unhear. I'd heard that name before, I was sure of it. Maybe Daniel had mentioned her once, maybe at dinner while I was half listening, believing every word from the man I trusted completely. The esthetician's voice drifted in and out, something about hydration and relaxation. I nodded along, pretending I wasn't drowning in the silence of my own thoughts. My body was still, but my mind was sprinting. Every sound, the soft clink of jars, the slow rhythm of breathing, felt sharper now, as if the entire room was conspiring to keep me awake inside a dream I didn't want. When I finally opened my eyes, the ceiling lights looked too bright, too honest. On the way out, I thanked the receptionist again, smiling like a woman who hadn't just felt the ground slip from beneath her. My reflection in the glass door looked calm, composed even, but I could see the tremor in my own eyes. Emily Rivera. I repeated it silently, memorizing it like evidence. I didn't know yet what it meant, but something deep inside me did. Something that was already preparing for what would come next. Back home, everything looked exactly the same. Daniel's jacket on the chair, the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the hallway, the TV murmuring some sports recap he'd left on. But something inside me had shifted. I couldn't stop replaying that moment at the salon. Her tone, her certainty, that name. Emily Rivera. It looped in my mind like a song I hated but couldn't turn off. I told myself not to overthink it, but my gut had already made up its mind. Something wasn't right. I moved through the kitchen, pretending to tidy up. though what I really needed was to steady my breathing. Every small detail suddenly felt suspicious. The way Daniel had been working late, his new obsession with his phone, the moments he smiled at messages he never showed me. I leaned on the counter, running my finger along a coffee cup ring, and whispered the name again under my breath. It didn't sound like a stranger. It sounded like a story I wasn't supposed to know. By the time Daniel came home, I had already rehearsed my tone. Calm, casual, almost bored. I wasn't ready for confrontation yet. No, this would be my quiet investigation. My mother always said women don't need proof. They just need patience. I smiled when he walked in, asked about his day, watched the way his eyes darted toward his phone. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious, and curiosity, I've learned, is the beginning of every truth. We sat down for dinner, the soft clink of silverware filling the silence that used to feel comfortable between us. I decided to start small, like testing the temperature of water before diving in. "Hey," I said lightly, cutting into my chicken. "How's work? Still the same project team?" He didn't look up right away, just mumbled something about deadlines and chaos. That's when I slipped her name in, smooth as a sigh. "Is Emily still part of that?" The air changed. I felt it before he even spoke. "Emily?" he repeated too quickly. "Oh no, she left. Why?" His fork froze for half a second, small, but enough for me to notice. I smiled, keeping my tone warm, almost amused. "Just curious. You mentioned her last month." He nodded, eyes on his plate. "Barely remember. She wasn't important." But his voice betrayed him. It was that subtle drop, the kind people use when they're building walls. He went back to scrolling through his phone, pretending to laugh at something on the screen. I just watched him, quiet, composed, studying every twitch of his hand, every pause in his breath. My heart hurt, yes, but my mind was steady, cold, almost clinical. I knew this dance too well. The avoidance, the distraction, the quick denial. My appetite disappeared, replaced by the taste of quiet fury. Inside, I whispered, "You're lying, Daniel. I can hear it in the way you breathe." That night, I lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling while he slept. His breathing was steady, peaceful, too peaceful. I wanted to believe him. God, I really did. But trust doesn't rebuild itself just because you wish it to. I turned slightly, watching the faint glow of his phone on the nightstand. It was like a silent third presence in our marriage, small, bright, and full of secrets. My chest tightened. I'd spent years sharing everything with him. Now, I wasn't even sure I knew who he really was. When his breathing deepened, I slipped quietly out of bed and opened my laptop in the dim light of the hallway. My hands trembled a little as I logged into our shared credit card account. It felt wrong, but not as wrong as being lied to. I scrolled through the list of charges, groceries, gas, bills, until one line stopped me cold. Luna's Touch Salon, $420, client, Emily Rivera. My vision blurred for a second, like the words had punched the air out of me. I took a screenshot, my fingers suddenly steady. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. For a moment, I didn't feel anger or heartbreak, just clarity, the kind that burns slow and deep. I closed the laptop gently, crawled back into bed, and stared at the man sleeping beside me. He looked so calm, so untroubled. I almost pitied him. Because while he dreamed, I was already planning my next move, and he didn't even know the game had started. The next morning, I woke up before Daniel. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the low buzz of my thoughts. I couldn't shake the need for answers, real ones. Not guesses, not intuition. Proof that spoke louder than excuses. So, after my second cup of coffee, I grabbed my keys and drove straight back to Luna's Touch. The irony wasn't lost on me, going back to the place that had unknowingly opened Pandora's box. But this time, I wasn't there to relax. I was there to confirm. The same receptionist was behind the counter, her cheerful energy unshaken by the mess she'd unknowingly stirred. I smiled, warm and effortless, like a woman who had nothing to hide. "Hi again," I said. "I wanted to book a follow-up appointment, and, I had a quick question." She nodded eagerly, clicking through the screen. My pulse thudded under my skin, but I kept my tone light, almost playful. "That Emily Rivera package my husband bought, what was it exactly?" Her face lit up like I'd just mentioned something wonderful. "Oh, that one's our most expensive package," she said proudly. "Couples spa, dinner vouchers, and personal hairstyling. He even added a handwritten note." I froze, still smiling, though every word sliced through me. "A note?" I asked softly, my voice sugar-coated over steel. The receptionist nodded enthusiastically, completely unaware she was twisting the knife. "Yes," she said, still smiling. "It said, 'To my beautiful Emily, you deserve the best.' So romantic." Her words floated in the air like perfume, sweet, cloying, unbearable. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't let it show. My lips stayed curved in that polite, practiced smile women wear when they're trying not to crumble. "That's lovely," I said quietly, my voice steady even as my pulse screamed beneath it. The rest of the conversation blurred. Appointment dates, times, meaningless chatter. My mind had already left the room. I was replaying that note over and over, as if the letters themselves were engraved into my skin. "To my beautiful Emily, you deserve the best." Each word was a betrayal disguised as affection. How many times had he told me I deserved the best? How many times had I believed him? I thanked her, nodded, and somehow managed to walk out with grace. Once I reached my car, I exhaled. A sound more like a sob I refused to let escape. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The betrayal didn't feel explosive. It was quieter than that, colder. It was the kind of pain that doesn't shout. It whispers, reminding you of every time you were fooled into feeling safe. Sitting there in that parking lot, I made myself a silent promise. He might have written her a love note, but I'd be the one to deliver the final message. I drove home in silence, the world outside blurring past in streaks of light and color I barely registered. The steering wheel felt heavy in my hands, like I was holding the weight of every lie Daniel had ever told me. My chest was tight, but not from heartbreak anymore. It was something sharper, something alive. For the first time, I wasn't crying. I was calculating. Every smile, every late night, every excuse he'd fed me, I could finally see them for what they were. Rehearsed lines in a performance I'd been too loyal to question. When I parked in the driveway, I stayed there for a moment, watching our home through the windshield. The curtains I'd chosen, the flowers I'd planted, the life I had built brick by brick, it all looked the same. And yet, it wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the version of me who believed him. I took a deep breath, straightened my posture, and smiled faintly at my reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked different. Fierce, maybe even dangerous. Inside, I placed my purse on the table and looked at Daniel's photo on the shelf, him grinning, arm around me, eyes full of ease. "To my beautiful Emily," I whispered, testing the venom in the words. Then I smiled. Not the soft kind, but the kind that knows justice is coming. He thought the game was still his to play. What he didn't know was that I had already rewritten the rules. I didn't confront him that night. That would have been too easy, too satisfying in the moment, and I didn't want satisfaction. I wanted impact. I wanted the kind of truth that didn't just sting but stayed. So I smiled through dinner, listened to his stories about work, and even laughed at his jokes. He had no idea the woman sitting across from him wasn't the same one he'd married. While he talked, I was already planning my next move, something deliberate, something unforgettable. Revenge, I realized, doesn't always shout. Sometimes it dines quietly beside you. The next morning, I called his boss, a friend of ours, and invited him and his wife over for dinner that weekend. "A little celebration," I told him. "Daniel's been doing so much lately." My voice was warm, casual, believable. I could have won an award for that performance. But the real twist came later that afternoon when I composed a short, anonymous email. I typed slowly, savoring each word. You're cordially invited to a celebration dinner. Daniel will be the guest of honor. Dress elegantly. And then I sent it to Emily Rivera. When the email whooshed out of my drafts, I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange calm wash over me. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about revelation. I didn't want to scream or throw things. I wanted silence, the kind that follows when truth finally walks into the room uninvited. And soon, it would. I glanced at Daniel across the living room, humming as he typed on his laptop, oblivious. He looked peaceful, confident. I almost pitied him. Almost. When Saturday night arrived, I set the table myself. Candles, silverware, everything in perfect symmetry. The dining room glowed softly, the kind of scene that belonged in a magazine spread, not a battlefield. Daniel wandered in, straightening his tie, looking both impressed and suspicious. "Why the big dinner?" he asked, adjusting his cufflinks. I smiled as I poured the wine. "You'll see," I said sweetly. "It's to celebrate all the beautiful things you've done lately." The irony danced right between us, and he didn't even taste it. Our guests arrived, his boss and wife first, all polite chatter and compliments about the food. Daniel was relaxed then, charming in that way he used to be. I watched him laugh, watched him play the role of the perfect husband and colleague. It almost worked on me. Almost. But then the doorbell rang again. I wiped my hands, walked over, and opened it. And there she was, Emily Rivera, standing under the porch light, wrapped in nervous elegance. She smiled uncertainly, clutching her purse. Behind me, I heard Daniel's chair scrape the floor. "Vanessa," he whispered, his voice barely breathing. "Why is she here?" I turned slowly, met his pale face, and said softly but loud enough for everyone to hear, "You tell me." The room fell silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward him. My heart was steady, my voice calm. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now it was here, unhurried and devastating. Daniel's lips parted, but no sound came out. His boss's wife glanced between us, fork halfway to her mouth, as the silence grew thick enough to choke on. I kept my eyes on him, calm, unblinking, merciless. "You're the one who bought her a $400 Salon treatment," I said evenly, "and wrote her a love note." The words came out soft, almost tender, but they hit harder than any scream. Emily's face flushed crimson. She looked like she wanted to disappear into her seat. Daniel's boss just stared, his jaw tightening with every passing second. Daniel stood abruptly, his chair tipping backward. "Vanessa, stop," he stammered, voice trembling. "This isn't true," I finished for him. "You think I'd bring witnesses if it weren't?" I leaned forward slightly, smiling, my tone gentle enough to terrify him. "I just thought everyone should see what kind of generosity you're capable of, when it's not toward your wife." A quiet gasp escaped from the other side of the table. Emily pushed her plate away, tears glistening in her eyes. I stayed seated, composed, my fingers tracing the rim of my wine glass. I'd imagined this moment so many times. The confession, the excuses, the begging. But this silence, this heavy public stillness, it was better. It was justice wearing pearls and lipstick. Daniel's voice cracked as he whispered my name, but I didn't look up. I'd already said everything that needed to be said. The rest, the fallout, the ruin, that was his to handle. The night unraveled exactly as I knew it would. Daniel tried to explain, his voice desperate, words tripping over one another like guilty confessions trying to sound noble. His boss didn't say a word. He just stood, placed his napkin neatly on the table, and left with his wife, disgust carved across his face. Emily followed soon after, mascara smudged, head bowed. The front door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in years, the house felt honest, quiet, stripped of all pretense. Daniel turned to me, his eyes wild. "Vanessa, you humiliated me," he shouted, his voice echoing through the dining room. I tilted my head, almost curious. "You humiliated yourself when you thought your lies were safe behind salon doors." He stepped closer, trying to sound sincere, his hands trembling. Please, we can fix this. There it was, that pleading tone he used whenever he'd already lost. I almost smiled. Almost. I stood slowly, smoothing the fabric of my dress, and looked him dead in the eyes. No, Daniel, I said softly. You fix cars. You don't fix this. His mouth opened, but I was already reaching for my purse. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't cry or scream or look back. I just walked out, calm and deliberate, the cool night air wrapping around me like freedom. Behind me, the life I'd built was collapsing, but somehow I felt lighter than ever. I drove with no destination in mind, just the open road, the hum of the engine, and the soft rhythm of my breathing finally aligning again. For years, I'd been afraid of silence, afraid of what I might hear inside it. But that night, the silence felt like music. Every mile I put between myself and that house was another piece of myself I was reclaiming. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had peace, and that was more than I'd had in a long time. I stopped at a small overlook just outside the city. The wind was cold, sharp, honest. I wrapped my arms around myself and watched the lights below, thousands of little stories unfolding at once, some just beginning, others ending quietly like mine. I thought about all the years I'd spent forgiving, compromising, believing. How much of me had been poured into keeping things looking perfect from the outside. And yet, imperfection had set me free. Back in the car, I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My mascara was smudged, my lipstick faded, but I didn't look broken. I looked real, raw, alive, untamed. That woman staring back wasn't someone who'd been betrayed. She was someone who had survived it. I smiled faintly, gripping the steering wheel with a new steadiness. The next chapter of my life was unwritten, but for the first time, I'd be the one holding the pen. In the weeks that followed, Daniel tried everything. Flowers, calls, apologies written like bad poetry. I ignored them all. Guilt was his to carry now, not mine. I found a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, just enough sunlight to make mornings feel possible again. I'd wake up early, brew coffee, and sit by the window, relearning the sound of my own thoughts. It's funny how peace can feel foreign when you've spent years walking on eggshells. But slowly, it began to feel like home. People whispered, of course. The wives from Daniel's office called it unfortunate. I called it freedom. My friends said I was brave, but it didn't feel like bravery. It felt like survival. Like waking from a long, exhausting dream and realizing you're finally in control of your own breathing. Some nights, I'd still think about the look on his face at that dinner, the moment truth stripped him bare. I didn't feel guilt for it. I felt clarity. He'd handed me my freedom on a silver platter. He just didn't realize it. I started to think about what came next, about creating something of my own, something built on honesty and care, the very things he lacked. The idea came quietly one morning as I brushed my hair. A salon. My own place. A space where women like me could come not just to feel beautiful, but to remember who they were before someone made them doubt it. That thought bloomed in me like spring after a brutal winter. I was done being a chapter in Daniel's story. It was time to write my own book. Months later, my life felt unrecognizable, in the best way. My salon, new touch, smelled of fresh lilies and warm vanilla every morning, a scent that somehow felt like healing. I'd built it from the ground up, every detail reflecting a piece of me. Soft lighting, gentle music, honest laughter. Women came in tired, unseen, worn down by life's little betrayals, and they left lighter. That was my favorite part, watching them rediscover the sparkle in their own eyes. I didn't just style hair anymore. I restored something deeper. One quiet afternoon, as I was finishing a client's blowout, the bell over the door chimed. I turned, expecting one of my regulars, and froze. Daniel. He stood there awkwardly, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes darting around the place like he didn't belong. And he didn't. Vanessa, he said, voice uncertain. I didn't know this was yours. I smiled, the kind of smile you earn, not fake. Don't worry, I said calmly. We only offer honest services here. His laugh was small, embarrassed. I miss you, he whispered. I studied him for a moment. The same man, just smaller somehow. Then maybe, I said, keeping my tone soft but sharp, you should have paid for loyalty instead of luxury. His face fell, and I turned away, running my fingers through a client's hair as if he were already gone. He lingered for a second before walking out quietly. The door closed behind him, and with it, the last trace of the life I once had. After he left, the air felt lighter, almost cleaner, like his absence had finally completed the cleansing this place represented. I glanced at my reflection in the salon mirror. Steady eyes, a woman who had walked through fire and come out polished, not burned. My new business partner, Claire, popped her head in from the back, smiling. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Better than ever. We laughed, the kind of laughter that carries a quiet understanding. Two women who'd both learned that pain can be recycled into purpose. Later that evening, we closed early and opened a bottle of champagne. To fresh starts, Claire said, raising her glass, and to women who know when to walk away. I clinked mine against hers, the bubbles fizzing like little celebrations of freedom. And to silence, I added. She looked at me curiously. Silence? I smiled. Yes, the kind that doesn't mean weakness, the kind that means peace. We drank, and for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anyone. As the lights dimmed and the salon settled into its nighttime quiet, I leaned against the counter, looking at the sign out front glowing in soft white. New Touch. It wasn't just a name. It was a declaration. Every woman who walked through those doors would leave with something new. Strength, clarity, self-worth. I ran my hand over the polished surface of the reception desk, feeling proud, grounded, whole. The woman who once flinched at a stranger's name on a receipt was gone. The woman standing here had rewritten her story, and this time, she owned every line. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the windows, warming the chairs, the mirrors, the fresh flowers by the entrance. I unlocked the door early, letting that light fill every corner like a quiet applause from the universe. My first client of the day walked in, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a hesitant smile. As I guided her to the chair, I saw something familiar in her reflection. That mix of strength and uncertainty I once carried. Rough week? I asked gently. She nodded and I smiled. Don't worry, you're in good hands. While I worked, she began to talk about love, disappointment, starting over. I listened, truly listened, realizing how many of us are just searching for safe places to exist. When I finished, she looked at herself and whispered, I look like me again. I placed my hand on her shoulder. You always did, I said softly. And in that moment, I understood. Healing isn't loud, it's steady, it's silent. It's the small decision to keep choosing yourself every day, even after someone else didn't. As she left, I tidied up the chair, the smell of lavender still lingering in the air. The world outside kept moving. Cars, voices, life. But inside New Touch, time slowed to something beautiful. I looked around my salon, my sanctuary, and felt the kind of peace that doesn't need witnesses. In my mind, I could almost hear a voiceover to my own story. He thought love was something you could buy, but mine came with a refund he'll never forget.